Good morning, besties. Welcome back to the Cozy Corner. It's your girl, Jen, and if you're new here, welcome. Just a regular old college student at Cal State Dominguez, but if you're not new here, welcome back to the chaos. So in today's video, I'm going to be starting a 3-part series of literally the best books that I've read in 2025. I have mentioned in a few videos that this year hasn't been like the most audacious, crazy, like best reading year ever. Next year, I'm really hoping it'll be a lot better just because I am going in with a plan. I'm going to be rereading my favorite books for literally throughout the year, starting with Throne of Glass in January for my birthday. I will do a whole reading vlog on that, spoiler ridden. So if you haven't read the book or if you haven't read the series, go watch any other channel. I know Larry Reed's has one. I'm pretty sure Jamie has one. I believe maybe Lauren has one as well. So definitely go check out those. But definitely going definitely going into the year of 2026 with intention with my reading goals. That being said, I figure I wanted to do a 3-part series based off of all of the books that I've read this year because I figure, one, if these are the favorite books that I've had each month, then I'm probably going to talk about them a little bit more than I would if it was like maybe just like the worst books that I ever read, if that makes sense. And plus, there's also a couple of books that I like read each month that were better than the other stars. So it's like literally this is going to be like top tier every month. This is the best books that I've ever read. And I'm going to go in with the first 4 months of 2025. So I'm going to go with January, February, March, and April. In the next video, I will go over May, June, July, and August, and so on and so forth until we wrap up this 3-part series. Because I do want to give some love and some attention and some time to these books because clearly I love them for a reason, right? So getting into it, in January, I had one 5-star, and I'm gonna do like 2 or 3 every month. So one 5-star, one 5-star, 1, 2, 3 4.75 stars, and then we'll keep it there and just keep it pushing. So with my 5-star, I read Divine Rivals this year, and guys, okay, I read this during the winter break. So I like read this during my 2-hour walks around campus. If you don't know, I live on campus. I go to Cal State Dominguez, and it's just a thing around here that during the heavy breaks like summertime or winter breaks, sometimes spring breaks, depending on if I have the time to do that, I'll like go on a 2-hour walk around campus after my workout, just like as a nice cool down to give myself some time to read. Because if I'm at home reading, I'm not going to be reading. I'm going to be doing a whole bunch of other stuff that has nothing to do with reading. So if you don't know, Divine Rivals is following 2 characters. Rivals is in the name. I feel like this was kind of like, yes, they were rivals to lovers because they were competing for a position, but it was more like it didn't take a lot of time for them to like get into it with the banter, if that makes sense. So we're following 2 characters. I do forget their names, so I'll have them up here, but they're basically like, one's from a very prestigious background. He's very high upper class echelon society, and he's competing with this girl for a position at this like really prestigious, I'm pretty sure, like journaling company. And then we're following this other girl who is coming from like lowest of the low, struggling to pay her bills. I believe she's taking care of her mom, and she's also struggling to compete for this position as well. We're following these 2 characters. They meet, and then they're told by the company manager that, hey, you 2 are going to be competing for this position. You're going to have to give me like X amount of like homework, journaling, like material every single week or something like that. And then by the end of this month or 2 months or whatever period of time, we'll like, come back and discuss to see who got the position. And so on top of that, this is also magical realism. And so 2 characters, at the FMC and another character that we find out later, they each have this magical typewriter that was like passed down through their family. And I'm pretty sure that there's only like 2 or 3 of these typewriters in existence. And so you'll find out later in the series, like later in the book, it's only duology. So like definitely spend some time reading it. You'll love it. It's amazing. And I loved it, obviously. So but these magical typewriters, essentially, you can they're like all interconnected, so you can send like, how do I say this? Typewriter C can send a message to typewriter B, typewriter A, and vice versa. So like they can all connect. But because they've been passed down through the family, and I'm pretty sure that some of these like characters haven't like heard the lore about it, they just kind of like know that this has been passed down through the family and that, they're a thing, right? So this person, the FMC, is sending out, like, she has a pen pal. She like sends out messages to this other typewriter, and she doesn't know who they are. She doesn't know where in the world they are. She just knows that they like are the kind of like, pen pals. She'll like tell them about their day, and just, updates on life and like advice and whatever the heck else. This other person, who we find out later, in the beginning of the book, like you have an inkling of who it might be, but you don't know for sure until later. So you think in your head, maybe it's a love triangle. Like, okay, like love it. And so also we're in wartime, like wartime. So I'm guessing this is kind of like I low key thought it was like World War I, two, like that kind of situation where it's like multiple countries fighting for something. Like I want like it gave like a lot of like it pull I feel like the author pulled from a lot of different like war times, like different situations to create this book. And I loved that because it gave a different perspective on history as we know it, if that makes sense. So in this world, two gods are fighting in this war for something. Like one god, the big bad, is like fighting for love, and then the other one, I think, is just fighting because the big bad used to be like um with them, if that makes sense, like romantically. And so something happens, and then the FMC ends up going to like participate in the war as a like a wartime journalist, if that makes sense. So she's like getting the she's like a report, yeah, she's a reporter, exactly. So she's in the war writing all of these things down, and then she'll write an article and send it back to the publishing company so that they can release it to the public. And she wants to have she's noticed that there's like a lot of propaganda and lies spread about this war, and so she wants to give like the truth, the big scoop, like what's going on. She wants to be in like real time, and she ends up like the story kind of goes from there. I'm not going to say anything else because like there's a whole lot of spoilers, and I feel like you should just go read it. But again, this is like the Divine Rivals duology. The second one is Broken Vows. I didn't like it as much, but I did still give it a 4.75 stars. So like this is still this is like with the second book that's in this like little January, like favorite books of January. I don't want to say too much else because there's a huge plot twist at the end, and it's very spoiler ridden. All I'm going to say is that essentially the roles are switched. The FMC knows who the pen pal person is at this point, but the pen pal person is like the roles are switched. Like they don't know who the FMC is. Whereas in the first book, the FMC didn't know who the pen pal was, but the pen pal, like, pretty sure he knew like who the FMC was, if that makes sense. And again, we're like following more onto like the war, like sides have been taken on purpose or by accident against their will, etc. And now the FMC is part of like the underground organization to defeat the big bad, if that makes sense. I'm not going to say too much else because like that's like a huge leap. I don't want to talk about any spoilers. If you have read this duology, you kind of understand like what I'm talking about, and it's just amazing. If you didn't like this duology, I know some people did. I know this was like a duology that people either really, really, really loved or didn't like as much. But me personally, I loved it. Like this is not like the typical FMC badass going through her training arc. She's literally just a girl trying to survive during wartime, and so that's the Divine Rivals duology. I forget the author's name, but definitely recommend. She came out with a book this year, 2025, going over the gods, I believe, before they got into the war. So highly, highly recommend. This is the author's name up here, but let's move on, right? So Five Broken Blades. It was like in like a between a 4.75 star to a 5 star. We're following if you kind of like read my if you listen to my I forget which TBR wrap up it was, but a few months ago I read the Three Shattered Souls book, and I like kind of like gave you guys a rundown of why the Five Broken Blades, Four Ruined Realms, and Three Shattered Souls are titled the way that they are. Characters get knocked off, and like you cannot like go into this book trying to get attached to any of these characters because you don't know who's gonna get killed next until like the end of the book, and it's just like a very heart wrenching thing. But we're essentially following a cast of 6 characters, all like very morally gray, all from different backgrounds. We have poison maidens, we have like a prince and his not champion, but like they grew up together, their childhood besties, their childhood lovers, and they're both like on opposite sides, but they're both fighting for the same thing, blah blah blah. We're following a strong man and a thief, and then we also have the poison maidens. Basically like she was what do you say, like how do you say it, she was like not trafficked per se, but she was bought by a like this lord, and he like put her through poison school, and then she was one of the people that survived, and then his son is the 6th character, and he's basically supposed to be her guard because the lord sent her on this mission that the 6 people go on, and so they all have like different goals within this mission, but essentially they're trying to overthrow the king of this land. He's very corrupt. He's very evil. There's like a whole bunch of just like nasty stuff going on. Like people are dying left, right, and center, and they're like from the like lower class society, and it's just like those typical like we're trying to fight for what's right, we're trying to get justice, and blah blah blah. Like this typical story like that, but I really loved it because these six characters come together to defeat the king, and then something really interesting happens at the very end. I'm not going to say what it is because it is a big spoiler, but it does lead into the next book. And again, if you've listened to my previous wrap ups, you kind of know like what that is because I do like discuss more. But because if this is your first time reading this thing, this trilogy, I don't want to say too much because I feel like you should go in knowing as little as possible so that you can enjoy it to the fullest. That's just my personal opinion. The last book on my January TBR for 2025 that I really really loved was The Soul of the Witch. So I read the Souls trilogy by Harley LaRue, and the last book was like my favorite book. I'm not gonna lie. Like the first book I gave a 4.25, the second book I gave a 4.5, and like the last one I gave a 5 full like 4.75 stars. Like I loved it. So this trilogy I didn't like, I still liked it, but what became a little bit annoying is that it was the same. I didn't know like this was my first interconnected standalone, but it was literally to the fullest extent of what an interconnected standalone could be. So we're following the same story but told by different characters and different couples. And so I was like, okay, like this is really interesting. I love the connection and like romance and like um chemistry, I guess, that you're forming between these characters, but I don't want like I already know what happens at the end. And so I'm just following it from different characters' points of views and I'm just like this is kind of getting annoying. But I kind of like took after the second book and then that after I realized that what that happens in the I like sorry, let me just start over. After I realized that this is literally the same story and that we're just following the characters' different point of views within the same story, I kind of just like let go of that thought and I'm like, you know what, I just want to figure out what's going on in these characters' minds. So we're essentially following a female who ends up, well, I don't want to say like that's rude. We're following a woman in each of these books and she ends up getting like paired with this like demon, and so there's like demon sex. It's very spicy, so go in knowing that. But the last book we're following a very very pure, I give this a 4.75 star by the way, so I don't know if I mentioned that already, and if I did I'm so sorry. I'm going to repeat myself, right? So we're following a like very pure innocent being, like grew up in the church. She's like a very goody two shoes, very conservative, and something happens at the beginning of the book, and so she ends up like, uh, what do you say? Like she ends up I guess trailing off is a word, but that's not the right word that I'm looking for. But she ends up trailing off from her family's views because she sees that this family is very corrupt and that they're doing all these evil things, and she doesn't want to be part of that like at all. And so she's also like a witch's daughter, like a high witch's daughter, and so she has these powers, and so she ends up finding a cottage in the middle of the woods, and a matron in her family, I want to say it's her grandmother or her great grandmother, has this cottage, but her mom never told her about it. And so when she finds it, she's like has this connection to it. The house very much responds to her and like literally everything she wants. I'm imagining like am having it's giving Nesta from A Court of Silver Flames when like the house gives her whatever she wants and like responds to her every whim. But she ends up finding this man in bed. So we kind of have a Sleeping Beauty moment, but he's not like she doesn't have to kiss him to wake up. Like he's been in stasis. He put himself in stasis just to like pass the time for the vibes. And then he wakes up and sees her and it goes from there. And it's hilarious. I love their banter. There's some things that happen in this book that I'm like, oh, we went there. So because she's so pure, she's never had sex before, and he like basically teaches her about the spicy time, the spicy life. And there's a couple of scenes in this book that I couldn't take seriously. Like I had this cheesy grin on my face because it was so audacious. It was so obnoxiously funny. And maybe that's just like me being immature as hell and not being able to take this book seriously, but there's a pegging scene. I don't even know if I'm allowed to say that on YouTube where she pegs him and it's so okay, it's meant to be like this girl is taking the reins, taking control in like becoming a badass hoe, but like or a badass bitch, but like I could not take it seriously, y'all. Like it was hilarious. Go read it if you like literally if you want. I think it's on Kindle Unlimited, the entire series. But it's just like literally a good spicy time. You know the story already by book one, and then like you're just following the different characters of like their parts within that story. Um And that's all that I'm really gonna say. There's like this demon tentacle. No, they're actually known as gods. So like the demons are the good guys and like the gods are the bad guys. But like there's this big bad that they're trying to kill, trying to defeat, and like he's like just been living there for vibes and like sapping the energy from this town for like thousands of years. And so it's just a good fun, like good funny time. Go into it knowing that. Don't take it seriously, you know, have a good time too. Be 18 years or older before reading this book, please. This is not like one of those books where it's like you can get away because it's like technically gonna be like a closed door like sex scene. Like no, please be 18 years or older for this book and go in knowing that. Okay, I just got called in for work, so I'm really gonna attempt, knock on wood, to get this video wrapped up so that I can go to work. Because if you don't know, I'm on hold today, and I get a message saying, "Hey, you've been stationed at this location. Please go, go to that location when you can." Right? Well, technically, I have a 2-hour window to get there, but like that's the one, right? Because I don't have that much time going on. In February, I'm gonna go really quickly. There were three 4.75 stars this month. There was Four Ruined Realms, which is the second book to the Five Broken Blades trilogy. Like I said, we pick up right where we left off at the very, very end of book one. And like I said, there's a plot twist at the end, so I don't want to say too much more. But essentially, all of these characters are now like pointing fingers at each other, kind of like a spider, like a negative, dark side of Spider-Man, like the Spider-Man scene of like they're all pointing at each other, like what, who, like that's crazy. But essentially, like these characters have all done something to lose their trust in each other, but they also have to work together to take care of the king's like next steps, if that makes sense. That's all I'm gonna say on it. Definitely go read it. This is like a situation where like it's very character driven. I'm sorry. It's very character driven. And the books essentially go into like they start at the beginning like not trusting each other, they build some trust, and then they break it at the end, and so it's like a cycle, right? But next up is Stalking Jack the Ripper by Carrie Maniscalco. This is my first Carrie Maniscalco books. I know that she has like a bunch of different series, and this is the Stalking Jack the Ripper series. My girl is twisting her tongue this whole time. But essentially this is like old London when Jack the Ripper had like, been like infamous and been active. But essentially we're following this girl who's like from an upper echelon society. Her dad is working as a forensic scientist, I want to say. So her and her dad are basically like they work in the morgue. It's not a forensic scientist, it's something else, but like they work in the morgue. They're like dissecting the body and like trying to find out how they died, and then they work directly with the crime the not crime organization, that's bad, they work with the police department to find out who did it, right? And so they're like following the Jack the Ripper case, and then at the end we find out who it is, and it's really interesting, and then we move on. I don't know how many books there are in this series. I'll like put it up here, but each book follows the same two sets of characters within like they're following different situations that happen. So the second book, I think I want to say is like Hiding from Houdini. I think it's the third book, but like it's just like it's like a bunch of like old infamous crime stories, and they're the ones who solve it. The last book was the A Study in Drowning. This year, I believe, A Theory in Dreaming came out, and I will be reading it next year. But I listened to A Study in Drowning on audio, and guys, like I said for the millionth time, if I listen to it on audio, because I was listening to it too fast and maybe not paying attention, I did rate this lower. So this could have been a 5 stars, but like 4.75 stars is like still like amazing. Read it. Like this is like definitely like highly recommended, right? So Studying in Drowning, I want to say, follows this girl who's a writer at this university, but because she's a woman, she like can't get like she's just not that girl, right? Literally, like because she's a female, she can't progress in life at this university. And so she's like, fuck that. I'm gonna write this essay, and I'm gonna like be the best fucking writer that I could be and that ever like existed. And so she ends up going to this like abandoned kind of manor within like in like the middle of nowhere. It's very much giving there's like this old spooky movie that like came out like a long time ago, and it's following the guy who played Harry Potter. I forget his name, I'm so sorry. And I believe him, his daughter, and his wife are in this manor, and they're like surrounded by like this bog. Um and a whole bunch of stuff, and like a whole bunch of stuff happens, but like it's I'm having a hard time articulating, but like it's essentially like got those vibes. Like they're surrounded by this bog, they can only go out and travel across this bog during certain times of the day at low tide, and if they travel at high tide, then they can't, they have to wait until it goes back to low tide. But essentially my cat is falling asleep standing up, and it's so cute. Let me probably wrap this up because I have to go soon. Like I should have gone now. But what do you call it? A Study in Drowning. Yeah, I lost my train of thought here. But essentially, at this manor, like a whole bunch of like magical realism, like fairyland, evil fairies, evil king, like fairy king comes out. And so this girl ends up finding out and like, following the breadcrumbs. And by the end of it, I believe she ends up defeating the big bad. This is also a romance, but I think it's focused more on the story and not as much on the romance. We do get maybe a couple of spicy scenes in this book, but I think it's closed door. That's all I'm gonna say on that because I do need to wrap this up. In March, I only, I had two 4.75 stars. I had The Priory of the Orange Tree. If you don't know what that book is about, I kind of talked about it before, but this is like high fantasy, a very, very thick book. I only read 3 books in March because of these thick ass books. And like, I talked about it in my worst books of 2025 because like this month, in March, there was a 3.75 star book that followed the prequel of this duology. But Priory of the Orange Tree is epic fantasy, multiple different point of views that like it's kind of like Game of Thrones where it's like you follow millions of point of views and like they kind of like leads the story from there. I don't even want to say it's character driven. This is very like story driven. This is sapphic romance, but like again, very like closed door, not a whole lot happens on page. It's more off page and they kind of like give you hints and breadcrumbs, but this follows like hidden societies. The Priory of the Orange Tree is actually a secret society that has magic, and magic is actually outlawed in this specific land. It's kind of like we have two sides, two specific countries, and then we also have the Priory of the Orange Tree Society, which is kind of like in the middle. But one side is like basically what do you call it? They're like anti-magic, very like German-esque. It kind of gave like the structure, architecture gave very German. And then this other side of the world who like thrives on magic, they use it daily. They are like very it gave very Southeast Asian, like it gave very Japan, if that makes sense. Like I don't want to sound stupid, but like the architecture, the vibes, the types of history like gave like Edo period. But also essentially I wanted to like get, kind of build a little bit before I go into it, even though I'm doing a horrible job at it because like this book is just so huge and like it's so like there's a lot of world building throughout the series, throughout the book. But essentially this dragon technically has been sealed and it's told by the people who like rule this land in the German society. I'm just going to call it the German society. It's called something else, but it's told by the German society that the queen that lives in this land is the only person that's sealing the dragon. And if something happens or if she dies or if she doesn't reproduce, then this dragon will be like set free. That's actually a lie. And like the dragon comes down and says, hey, like, you've been lying to your people, blah, 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 blah. And like, it becomes like a war to defeat the dragon from there. That's all I'm going to say on that. I don't really know how else to articulate it, but I do highly recommend going to read it. But like, definitely give yourself some time to digest because Samantha Shannon just throws a whole lot at you and doesn't give you like a whole, like, it doesn't give you a second to like, decompress everything. But the last book that I read in March is Immortal Dark. Again, I give this a 4.75 stars. I did listen to this on audio. I know a lot of people didn't like this book. I know Jamie really didn't like this book. Even though Freya like really loved it. If you don't know, like they're besties and they have a whole podcast. I feel like you should go watch it. But Immortal Dark is following a girl whose sister, I believe they're twins, but I don't know for sure, but whose sister went missing. And so she's been looking for her sister forever. And then this like essentially like Harvard, Yale director or like, president of the university came to her what do you call it, her house one day, and like this is also how do I say this, like she gives her a ultimatum saying like, hey, you're like the heir of your family and so you've inherited this manor, this house, this mansion, there we go, and like this and essentially like within the will you would get this house to yourself, but you have to live there for a year and you have to put up with this like very grumpy, very annoying, very rude, very bully person, and then if you live there for a year then you get this mansion to yourself. And she's like, well, I don't really care about that. And she's like, well, free tuition. And she's like, you know what, let me go do that because I'm also looking for my sister and apparently my sister's here somewhere. So she goes off, does like puts up with his bullshit, and they end up having like, it's very bully romance, so if you're not into that, I don't recommend going to read it. But at the end it's kind of like it's still a mystery that they're trying to solve, but they also don't trust each other, and so they have to learn how to trust each other and a whole bunch of stuff happens. But I did give this a 4.75 stars. I do really I do remember loving it, and I believe the second book came out recently or is coming out soon. That's all I'm going to say on that. Our last month is April, and let me just count real quick. I had 3 5 stars and no, 4 Damn. Okay, so one, two, three, four, five. I had a 5 star. Five stars. That's crazy because, like I said, this entire year I have not like I've been missing the 5 stars. I'm just gonna go down the list, starting with Love Theoretically. This is my first Ali Hazelwood book, and we're essentially following a girl. This, if you don't remember, if you don't know, Ali Hazelwood is very much like a STEM romance author. She loves inserting STEM into her romances, and I love it. But essentially, in this book, we're following a girl who's fighting for this position, and so she ends up going to an interview. It's I believe it's called like a board director interview. It's like a panel interview. There we go, where she's like having dinner. It's supposed to be very informal. She's supposed to have like already secured the job. She's just doing this for like, paperwork essentially. She goes to this interview. She's having dinner with these people, and she ends up seeing her rival. By the way, some context real quick. Not a rival. It's something else, but like she runs this fake dating business where people essentially need, I don't think she runs it, but like she's part of this fake dating business where it's all legal, but like she essentially is like a girlfriend for hire, for people who just need a girlfriend for hire or a girlfriend to hire. There we go. But this person who's on the panel interviewers, they know her because she's dating his brother. And so she thinks that, like, he doesn't like her. He thinks she's like very, like, he just thinks that she's not the one for his brother, and he's very protective of his brother, as any person, as any good person is or should be. Girl, I'm having a hard time articulating my words today. I think it's just because I'm nervous, because like I should have left already for work. But regardless, so she's on this panel, and then he ends up like low-key sabotaging her, but it kind of like goes from there. And then I believe I want to say that this is a book on the theoretical versus physical physicists. That's a hard word to say. And so it just, the story goes from there. I'm having a hard time articulating the story because it was so long ago, but I do remember loving this series. And so this is actually, no, I'm sorry, this loving this book because it's a standalone, right? I remember being with my besties in school, and like we all decided to read the book this month. And I remember texting the group chat like, "Hey, no spoilers, but like chapter 19." I was in the middle of my workout, and I just had to sit there mid glute thrust and be like, "Whoa, like, okay, okay, like that's crazy." Like the spicy scene in chapter 19 was perfect, amazing, loved it, left no crumbs. The next 5 star that I found was Pen Pal. This low key, like the last 70 pages of this book had such a plot twist that I was sitting there like, no way. That's crazy. But this is a paranormal romance. We're following a girl whose husband recently died, and her house is haunted. Like all of a sudden her house is haunted. And so she thinks that her like either her husband or somebody else is haunting her this house, but she also needs to like renovate it because she's broke as hell and this house is falling apart. And so she ends up hiring this guy, this contractor, to come and remodel her house. She doesn't have a lot of money, but he says he'll do it for free. And the story goes from there. But at the end, you kind of like realize, like during, so she ends up having like a seance essentially to like, sage the house and like get rid of these evil spirits. But like at the last 70 pages of this book, the plot twist is insane. And I'm not gonna say anything else, but I do recommend going into this book blind because it's just peak. I loved it and it was amazing, and like the sex scenes. The only thing I will say is that he calls her bunny, and like there's like this not reference to bestiality, but it's like it's foreplay, it's role play, and so he calls her bunny, and like she calls him like lion or something like that, or like Simba or like the Lion King, something like that, like something stupid. But it's really interesting. It's really funny, and I highly recommend going to read it. Again, be please, 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 please be 18 years or older to go read this book. The next book is All Roads Lead Here by Mariana Zapata. I have not read a Mariana Zapata book since this, but I do remember really, really loving this book. So we're following a girl who ends up moving to this small town to get away from her ex-husband, and she ends up renting this house. But the person, the landowner, the person who lives there, doesn't know that his son rented the attic essentially to this girl. And so they have like a spat at the beginning where like they're all arguing, and she's like, "Listen, I just need a place to stay, like I'm so sorry, I don't want to be involved in this, but like can you just like let me stay here for 30 days, and we'll like I'll like move out from there, but like I just need a place to stay." So he ends up letting her stay to do with the condition that she does odd jobs around the house or something like that. I forget. I'm probably like totally botching this, but in exchange, like she needs to stay away from like him and his son. Like he wants nothing to do with her. And so the romance goes from there. She ends up like finding a job at this like bait and tackle shop, and it just goes from there, and I loved it. It's very grumpy sunshine. She's the sunshine, he's the grumpy, and it's just it's so cute. Like the miscommunication at the end is kind of like very tropey, but like it was my first trope in my opinion, so it's like I ate it up. I'm not gonna lie. The last two 5 stars, I'm going to do this together because they are part of a duology. This is the cat and mouse duet. Please go in with a good mental state of mind because this book goes from gray to dark to midnight black, like pitch. And so we're following this girl who this is also a stalker romance, so like this is like my first like dark romance book, like full dark romance book. The Souls trilogy was like a little like little appetizer, a little teaser, but like this is like my full first full dark romance book. But we're essentially following this girl who's an author, and so she ends up getting inherited this mansion, this haunted mansion from her grandmother. I think I want to say like her grandmother is the one haunting it, low key. But she ends up going into this mansion and living there, and she has this like book signing event, and this guy is walking past after committing a murder. And the thing about him is he's also the head of this organization called Z, I want to say, and he's Z. But you find that out later. If that is low key a little spoiler, but it's fine. And he's like very morally black. He kills people for a living. He hunts down these sex trafficking organizations and like full throttle murders them. Like takes his time. He's a sadistic masochist. Like he just it's a whole time. He's not a masochist. He's a huge sadist, but essentially he sees her at this bookstore signing these books, and so he ends up like getting this huge infatuation with her, like this obsession. He ends up stalking her. He ends up porking her with a gun on their first meeting, and like she gets off on fear. She gets very aroused by fear, and so technically it's non-con, if that makes sense. But their romance at the very end, huge plot twist. She ends up getting kidnapped by these traffickers in the second book, and she gets groomed. It's very dark. I do recommend going in with like a good clean state of mind, but this book, the second book, is just the entire first half of the book is him trying to find her and her being trafficked. And it's very dark, but I do recommend I can recommend this book, but I can't. Like I loved this book. High 5 stars, both of these books, but like it's dark. It's very dark. Um that is the first 4 months of the year 2025. I do want to wrap this video up because again I need to go, like I should have been gone already. But regardless, these are all of the books that I loved in the first quarter of 2025. If you read any of these books, let me know what your thoughts were on these books in the comments below. Do subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. I do try to upload every Saturday. It's finals week, so like I've been a little off. I like this is technically a late like record for me because I usually have my stuff recorded like the Saturday prior so that I can upload the Saturday like the next Saturday, if that makes sense. But if you like this video, go ahead and like and give me your thoughts on any of these books in the comments. And if you don't know what to comment, let me know what books you're excited to read in 2026 because girl, I will be there. I will be there reading these books with you. But that is all for today. So if you like this video, I already said that and I'm just gonna cut this out, but I'm gonna head out and I will see you guys next week for a brand new video. I will see you guys next time. Bye guys.